brothers and sisters, we are currently going through a period as human beings where we are witnessing that how once before, a long time ago, it seems that there used to be value, there used to be some value for human blood. Whereas in today's day and age, with the current atrocities and the current climate throughout the world, we are witnessing that the human race has no value whatsoever, sadly. Amidst all the progressions in technology, all the progressions in education and all the various branches and sectors. This is very sad, but it's the reality. And what we're also noticing is, as we're developing and in many different sectors, we're getting wealthier, we're getting more modern, we're getting, exposed to advanced technology, but at the same time, we're witnessing lots of distances with immediate relatives. We're also witnessing the lack of unconditional love and compassion that used to exist amongst loved ones and family members, amongst siblings, amongst children, amongst elders, amongst uncles, amongst nephews, all these kind of things. And we're also witnessing how a lot of people are coming to the extent where it's very difficult to cope anymore. And everyone wants to seem to basically, run away and just move away and just want everything to just stop. Peer pressure has been increased. The levels of stress have been increased. All these problems we are facing. And all these problems, what they lead to is one of the biggest crises that we're dealing with presently, which is the weakened spiritual state of the human being. The weakened spiritual state of the human being. Or you may say, even go to the extent of saying the dead spiritual state of the human being. Yani the human beings have become so weak, not intentionally, but just because of all the atrocities, calamities, all this pollution. And pollution here refers to terrorism, intellectual terrorism, hate, violence, political agendas. All these things, what they've done is they've really weakened the spiritual component of the human being. But that's upon us as human beings and as Muslims, because Islam came to provide us that empowerment of spirituality. And we forget this. Sometimes we forget that Islam, our religion, our very faith, came to give us spiritual empowerment. What is spiritual empowerment? Spiritual empowerment is when you are going through so much struggles in the world. You may be living in asylum, you may be, you're marginalized, whatever it may be, whatever the problem may be, but faith really is there to provide you that spiritual growth and that spiritual strength in order for you to feel and to remain strong. And that's why we have to ensure that we best utilize and maximize with our faith in order for us to be spiritually strong. And that's why we have to transform from ritual to spiritual. We have to utilize our intellects. We have to develop a more understanding of the faith, a higher understanding of the faith, a deeper understanding of the faith. We have to engage ourselves in acts that will increase us in spirituality. And we have to be spiritually based. Because there's no such thing as faith without spirituality, whether you like it or you don't. And by spirituality, I don't just mean that we start telling stories and we start pretending to fly and no. By spirituality, we mean that we absorb and we take in and we inject inside of us all the goodness, the good human values, the values of kindness, generosity, humanity, affection, care, love, all these peace, all these wonderful qualities, we inhale them and we exhale them. That's how one increases in spirituality. By improving one's human nature, by stopping from lying, by stopping from cheating, by helping the environment, by cleaning one's inside and also contributing and giving. That's how one increases in spirituality. Because when one of the teachers was asked, one of the scholars was asked, it's attributed to Imam Junayd al-Baghdadi, that he was asked, what is the science of spirituality? How best can you define the science of spirituality? And he said that the science of spirituality, ihsan, whatever you want to call it, is akhlaq, it's good character.
Subhanallah.
And what that basically tells us is that you can put all the big talk of what you saw in your dream yesterday and what you saw in, people see things. But we're seeing so many things in the world which we don't want to see, but we have to kind of put all these things to a side and we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, how is my akhlaq? Because at the end of the day, you can wear an expensive watch, you can drive a nice car, and you could be worth lots and lots and lots. But what makes people admire you and what makes people remember you and what makes people look up to you is the impact of one's good character, the impact of one's akhlaq, the impact that one's akhlaq can have. Nothing can have such an impact. And Islam came to give us principles of having good akhlaq. Islam came to educate us. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. That I was sent to complete this whole chapter, this whole sector of good character. So it's very important that we think about these things. And also, having good akhlaq also means being positive. Being positive amidst all the negativity that exists in the world. Being positive. Being positive, being in a positive state. That's very important for one to advance spiritually, is to be in a positive state. Because without being in a positive state, there's no such thing as advancement. If you just, every single day, you're just thinking about all the problems that are in the world, or all the problems that you go through, then when will you begin to work on the solutions to eradicate these problems? Or when will you learn the lessons from all the mistakes, these kind of things? So one has to be positive-minded. One has to be positive-minded in order to be spiritually based. But you see, what I'm trying to talk about is, in order for us to rise up to that level, to increase and to improve our akhlaq and to be spiritually based, what's very, very, very important is that we have to work on ourselves spiritually. We have to work on ourselves spiritually, whether it's meditation. Obviously meditation and these things help, but one cannot rise spiritually without improvement in one's character, improvement in one's conduct, improvement in one's speech, improvement in the way we talk, the way we walk, the way we feel, the way we instill humbleness within us, the way we improve our feelings, our states, these kind of things. Ibn Ata'illah rahimahullah ta'ala, the great scholar of spirituality, what did he say? He said that the state, one state is more eloquent than one speech. One state is more eloquent than one speech. لسان الحال أفصح من لسان المقال. The tongue of the state is more eloquent than the tongue which is used to speak. In other words, which means that the spiritual state that we live, that we find ourselves in, but if it's good, then if we're inhaling positivity, if we're inhaling productivity, if we're inhaling, good, clean and pure intake, then what will come out is going to be pure intake and positive intake. It's very important that we think about these things. And that also means that obviously what this requires is, obviously, number one is working on the heart, working on the inside, working on the spiritual state. And that requires intellectual development. And what I mean by intellectual development is understanding and contemplating and elaborating on the Book of Allah Almighty and on the teachings of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family. To the extent that when we hear a verse that says to us, for example, when Allah Ta'ala is saying to us in the Quran, وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ, it's not just about reciting this verse, because each word that we're reciting in this verse, we're getting 10 blessings. We know that. But the point is going beyond that and living the verse and inhaling the verse so that we can exhale what is required to be exhaled and to be, to be followed up and to be lived from the true essence and the meaning of the verse. So when Allah Ta'ala says وَأَحْسِنْ, He's saying وَأَحْسِنْ, be good. Then we have to be good and we have to want to be good. And we have to think about always doing good. Because until we don't think, when I say that how we need to work on intellectual development and spirit, there's no such thing as spiritual development without, also thinking about these things. And the foundation is thinking, and even before thinking, there's something called the niyyah, which is working on the intentions. So when Allah Ta'ala says, وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ وَلَا تَبْغِ الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, it's no longer about just reading the verse and saying, inshallah, this is very good advice. Maybe someone should implement this. But that someone needs to be me if I want to obtain spiritual enhancement and advancement. Because this is a verse, and like all the verses, they are there to give us spiritual substance. And in order for us to work on our spiritual selves, when Allah says, وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ, we actually read the translation and we say, okay, this means that do good just in the same way that Allah has done good upon you. Then we don't just stop there, we look further. After the translation, we contemplate, we do tadabbur on the verse. We think, okay, what does this verse actually mean? How can I do good? How can I do good? Do I do good to Allah? How can I do good to Allah? How do I do good? How do I respond with good when in the way that Allah Ta'ala, He was good to me? How do I do that? Then we work on the intellectual development, we read the commentary of this verse, we understand, we obtain a deeper understanding through contemplation, through reflection, and we realize that Allah Ta'ala is saying, وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. He's saying, أَحْسِنْ يعني أَحْسِنْ إِلَىٰ خَلْقِكَ, that do good to the creation. Do good to the creation the same way that Allah does good upon you. Which means that be kind to the creation, be mindful of the creation, be generous to the creation, be gentle with the creation, be loving to the creation, be positive with the creation. And this verse, to be honest with us, my brothers, this is the first portion. I'll finish with the last portion. But the point is, if we just really understand the importance of what I'm talking about, we can really contribute and we can really enhance ourselves and we can really, continue the building of the spiritual self and continue on the development of the soul. Because the body is going to rot anyway. But what's most important is working on the soul. Because the more we work and improve the soul, and the more we improve ourselves spiritually, the more benefit we can give with our actions and with our bodies and with the strength that we have, the physical strength that we have. And the more weaker we are spiritually, then the lesser good we can perform and we can contribute towards. And what this verse really means, my brothers and sisters, in these times of difficulty, the times where we're seeing the destruction of homes, families, communities, nations are being destroyed in front of our very own eyes. It makes us realize that more so than ever right now, we need to care about humanity. We need to care about the whole creation of Allah Almighty. And that is what spirituality is all about. Where you go beyond yourself, you go beyond me, myself and I, and you look at the broader picture and you become someone who loves and who admires and who cares about the whole makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the way of the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They came to contribute and to provide to the entire makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And more so than ever right now, presently we need to act. And we need to care about the entire makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to care about all the sufferings that happen. Whether the sufferings are happening to Muslims, non-Muslims, whoever is suffering, we have to care for that suffering. Because it's part of وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. And we have to do whatever we can do. We can help financially, physically, or even if we can, a million miles away, we can pray, or we can just think about these individuals, have good thoughts, and pray for these individuals, or care. And this is part of that goodness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be part of. So we need to think about the entire makhluk. We need to broaden our spectrum, in other words. How long are we going to be boxed in for? And that also means, my brothers and sisters, is that if Allah Ta'ala wants us to think about the makhluk, then what that means is we need to think about the makhluk. And we need to basically mature from this name calling. And we have to mature and we have to basically grow up and we have to eradicate sectarianism by refraining from indulging in this poison, and by thinking of the bigger picture, and by understanding that we eventually, as spiritual beings that we are, as Muslims, a Muslim is a spiritual being. We have to realize that we have bigger fish to fry, and that is that we have to care for the whole of humanity, the whole of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why we have no longer any time to indulge or talk about how so-and-so is going to go into hell and how, so-and-so are deviants. All these kind of things, we have to move on from this. Because if you continue indulging in this poison, then the reality is we just continue to harm ourselves, and we're contradicting that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do. Allah ta'ala has sent us in the world as a test, and the test is what do we do for the world. Allah Ta'ala has sent us in the world as a test, but the test is what can we do for the world, not what can I do for myself. It's no longer about what you can earn and what you can bring for the table. Yes, we have to think about that, because before you focus on giving to the world, you have to give to your own family. But the point is, Allah has sent us in the world to see what we can do for the world. And we have to work for the world, not just work for ourselves. Not just for work for our own school of thought or our own school or our own religion anymore. We have to work for the world. This is the way of Islam. And the sooner we realize this, the better. And the sooner we realize this, the more we can increase and advance in spirituality, and the more we can become better human beings who care about their fellow brothers and sisters in humanity. Because, we've seen enough suffering, my brothers and sisters. Look, let's go back 5 years. What have we seen in these 5 years? But the question is, it's not about what we've seen in the 5 years. What have we seen in the 5 years that has increased us in humanity? What has made us think that we need to do something for the world? And how we need to think beyond caring for ourselves. Because after seeing all this violence, and all this bloodshed, and all this hatred, after seeing all of that, if we can't change, then we are very spiritually weak, and we are very intellectually weak, and we definitely need to get our act together. When someone, if someone sees someone being killed in front of themselves and they do nothing, that's a serious problem, and we're all seeing this. So, if one may say, I'm just gonna look, I'm gonna look, and I'm gonna look the other way. You can't look the other way because يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ, Allah says, we even know, we have the knowledge of the khiyana of the eye. So if you're pretending to basically pretend that you didn't see what happened, everyone has seen what's happened. And we all have the responsibility as Muslims, as spiritual beings, to work on eradicating this. But we have to begin by increasing in spirituality. Because you see, with a weak spiritual state, one can do nothing. One cannot even improve oneself. One cannot even help oneself when one is spiritually weak. Many times we think that it's all about finances, and it's true, if you're financially weak, you can't do much. But guess what's more important than being, guess what's more important and dangerous is that when someone is spiritually weak. Because when one is spiritually weak, then one is not able to think straight. One is not able to realize that Allah Ta'ala is there for one, and Allah Ta'ala is testing one through hardship. One is not able to value the ni'am, the blessings of Allah Ta'ala. One is not able to basically come through the trials and tribulations that we are faced with. And that's why Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says, وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. And we have to live this verse. And if you look at the next portion of the ayah is what? وَلَا تَبْغِ الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, which really summarizes that by doing good an hour before and by doing something evil an hour later, what you're doing is eradicating the same good that you did an hour before. It's like making a wonderful dish, preparing the dish, and an hour later you get poison and you now contaminate this dish with poison. In other words, talking about enhancing the spiritual state, doing good means distancing oneself from all evil and eradicating one's total contribution to any corruption or any evil or any wrongdoing whatsoever. And that means distancing yourselves from people who are engaged in corruption. By taking the noble route, the clean route, it also means observing the law of the land and the law of the religion. That's what it means. Because you can give $1 million in charity, but if you're gonna then the next day in a wrongful way, basically in a fraudulent way, it's not, I don't call that earning, steal $1 million, then there's no such thing as, there's no point of you doing that good in the first place. Yeah, if you do something bad in the first place and then you can eradicate it by doing something good. But when you do something good, by doing something bad after, you're eradicating the good that you did. Because the Quran says, إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ, that the good deeds, what do? They take away, they eradicate the bad deeds. But there's no such thing that, so we have to, but the Quran says that do good, but وَلَا تَبْغِ الْفَسَادَ, never ever be a part of the corruption that exists in the world. The corruption that exists in the name of the religion. This sectarianism, this thing where people say, let's do takfir, let's do these. This is corruption, my brothers and sisters. It's fasad fil ard. Because it leads to what? It leads to fasad fil ard, it leads to killings. The corruption of, for example, when people say, wrongfully, they say, so-and-so is evil, when so-and-so is good. And you say, you know what? Yes, so-and-so, just because he's more better than me, or because she's more successful than me, now I have to, basically tell tales, and now let's make this person look bad. This is fasad fil ard, it's corruption. Lying is corruption. Deceiving is corruption. And there's no way we can improve the spiritual state. And there's no way we can basically build on our spiritual state if we engaged in acts of corruption, regardless of the good we want to do and the good we do. There's no such thing as working for the haqq and also being part of the batil. There's no such thing like this. Is, Islam came to give us the values of honesty, the values of being honest and real. Islam didn't come to make us diplomatic. Islam is all about genuinity, about building the genuine spiritual being who is a good human being, who cares about all of the creation of Allah Almighty, who genuinely cares. That is what Islam came to give us. It came because Islam came to give every single creation, member of the creation, hope, growth and opportunity. And that's why we need to become inclusive. Because being exclusive is being part of the corruption that exists in the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to enhance our spiritual states. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to contribute towards all of the creation. May Allah ta'ala allow us to feel for the creation. May Allah ta'ala allow us to be good assets for the creation of Allah ta'ala, for the creation for humanity. May Allah ta'ala make us good tools that are able to serve humanity and serve the creation of Allah ta'ala. We should